Welcome. Hello, and welcome back to the FeaturesTalk Podcast, where we are making vehicle technology simple and relevant for everyday drivers like all of us. I
Mhm.
am your host, Lisa Bailey, and joining me is my co host and our resident automotive product specialist, Luke Verseput. Welcome back.
Hello. Hello. Another day, another Features Talk podcast. Except I say another Features Talk podcast, which it is, but we're doing something a little bit different this time, aren't we?
We totally are. And I'm actually really excited about that. We're switching things up a bit. We are living in a great time of content creation, right?
Mhm.
And so, we are all about micro learning here at FeaturesFirst Auto. And so, what we're doing this time is we are launching or starting a 4-part mini series.
Yep.
4 part. So, really, it's going to be 4 episodes. We're going 4 layers deeper into the rules, the road, and the people that are closing the ADAS knowledge gap. And so
Mhm.
this is April, and this month is actually Distracted Driving Awareness Month, which is a perfect time for us to kick off this mini series. And so these episodes will be a little bit shorter than our normal deep dive 45-minute to hour sessions. These are going to be nice, short, 30 minutes, or we're going to try. Me and Luke have
You
already been
know,
talking about this.
it'll be an attempt will be made. An attempt is going to be made. Telling two people who love talking about cars to
Right.
to condense talking about cars.
Yes.
Good luck. I mean, but
Yes.
you know what we're gonna try.
We're going to do our best. Yes, we are. And so, what we're going to do is kick off today, and we are going to kick off talking about something that we actually wrote an article about before, and I'm pretty sure everybody should be able to see in the comments. We are going to dive deeper into Euro NCAP's biggest overhaul of the 5-star safety rating system. And I don't want to say overhaul necessarily, but there are some major changes that have happened, some major additions that have happened that will now, as a driver, as a consumer, maybe as a person who's purchasing fleet vehicles, you will actually see the effects of these additions. You will see the effects, in
Yeah,
real time.
if not an overhaul, it's at least a very significant update.
Yeah,
It's an extremely significant update, and it's I think it's such a good thing to talk about, especially with this 4-part miniseries. You mentioning something, even just something like the 5, which we'll get into, but like the 5-star safety rating. What a ubiquitous, just like, I mean, not ubiquitous in that every car rates that way, but just like in the minds of consumers, it
hmm
just like it's like always there. You know,
yeah,
everyone knows or hears about the 5-star safety rating. Well,
hmm
what does that mean? Well, what that has meant has changed over time, and
exactly.
so this, if maybe not an overhaul of the entire system, this is another instance of it changing, of
hmm
it, or I should say, it being added to.
Right, right. And as we start to go deeper into these conversations, I want to make sure that even at the beginning of the conversation, we're going to lay the foundation. And so some of this might be redundant for some of our listeners because we have talked about some of the words or systems or terms in the industry before, but I want to lay the foundation and go over some basic terms that will
Mhm.
help our listeners navigate this series. When they hear us talking about it, they'll know exactly what we're talking about. And starting from, if you go back and look at the first 2 or 3 episodes of the launch of season 3, we've been talking about driver monitoring systems,
Yeah.
in cabin sensors, right? And so driver monitoring systems, we've dove deep in with Jason, and these are sensors in your car, in your vehicle, that can read if you are distracted. It can pick up on if you are fatigued. And these systems, these sensors actually send signals, right, from the driver in real time. And
Hmm.
then now we talked about adding AI to driver monitoring systems, that intelligence layer that we dove deeper into, in that reasoning of, okay, if the sensors do pick this up, then what should be happening to make sure that you are in a safe situation?
Yeah.
You think I said that good enough, Luke?
Yeah, I would say so. Driver monitoring system has been one of the big ones. Probably because I think in the minds of a lot of people, it does seem like one of the most new,
Hmm.
one of the most new things. And so that was a big thing we talked about,
Hmm.
and that is now, again, it's like Lisa mentioned, it's going to be taken into account when it comes to the 5-star safety rating for Euro's NCAP, and also just to put it out there, NCAP NCAP stands for New Car Assessment Program. So this
Yes.
is specifically focusing on how to evaluate new cars. And another big one, and this is of course kind of the umbrella term for all this, which is ADAS, ADAS, which is Advanced Driver Assistance Systems.
Hmm.
And so this is, it's a broader family of technologies. It's kind of the umbrella term that covers all these advanced safety features. And then it's another thing that is important to know about is this idea of a behavioral baseline, and
Yeah.
that is what your ADAS systems learn as a normal. Like, what is a
Hmm.
normal state of driving? What's a normal state of being? Again, all kind of under that driver monitoring system.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you broke down NCAP because I'm pretty sure the average person has no idea what we're talking about. And then if you see Euro, you're like, well, what does that have to do with us? And
Exactly.
so,
Right.
yeah, it is important that you know that what that stands for, and also their role, right? So it is a system that is viewed nationally, right? Globally.
Hmm.
And understanding that the safety rating that you achieve as a manufacturing brand under the Euro NCAP is then translated in the United States of America. And it
Yeah.
is the baseline, for a lot of decisions, even going down the supply chain to you as a consumer. You
Yeah.
actually observe it, whether you know how deep or how involved it is in the supply chain. That is what we're diving deeper in today because it is something you need to know about. There are 4 pillars of this NCAP assessment, right?
Yeah.
And then these are some of the things that have changed. Is safe driving. So pillar number 1 is safe driving. Pillar number 2 is crash avoidance. So
Hmm.
here's what we're talking about with ADAS systems, these driver assistance systems that are assisting drivers in preventing the crash altogether. Okay.
Hmm.
And then crash protection. So if it does happen in the event of, what does that protection look like? So we're talking about airbags, we're talking about other things that are being evaluated. And then you've got the post crash safety. And so
Hmm.
the shift that has happened is from reactive crash survival. So the crash happens, then what happens? It's really shifting to a holistic, honestly, ecosystem of how do we possibly prevent it, avoid it altogether. So let's evaluate the vehicle and the capabilities of that. And then let's evaluate the capabilities post crash.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to see them lay it out like this. That yeah, there's 4 pillars, but they actually list the 4 pillars in chronological order of how this would happen.
Mm-hmm.
Safe driving, which is, how safe can we make a drive safe enough that you wouldn't even find yourself in a situation where a crash could even be possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just, I mean, outside of just don't drive. Like, how safe can it be to where there's just no possibility of an accident? And
Yeah.
then it's like, well, if something there fails, then you get into, there could be a possibility of a crash. So how do you avoid that in an instance where like, well, you're driving, you might go, whoa, that was close, or something like that, which,
Mm-hmm.
you want to prevent that, but how do we avoid that? And then if, God forbid, we hope it doesn't happen, but if it does happen, the protection for if the impact does happen, and then post crash, how can it be
Right.
safe? And I know, Lisa, you had mentioned like the term overhaul, and you said it's like, you know maybe there's a check on that, maybe that's a bit of a strong term to use, but it kind of is when you think about how this would have been evaluated in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's all these safety evaluations would have been formed under the assumption that, well, of course the car is going to crash. human
Right.
beings are human beings are imperfect, so cars are just going to get in accidents, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just a part of life. And
Mm-hmm.
so really we just need to worry about, does the airbag work, does the 3-point seatbelt keep you from going forward,
Right.
because of course a crash is going to happen. But it's actually not too far of a reach to say partial overhaul,
Yeah.
in the
I
modern
agree.
age, because now there's this whole other dynamic of, well, our technology has increased to the point where we might not even have to worry about getting to that point.
Exactly. And that I am so glad you said that, because there is a connection right there that I think is very powerful, because that translates to the design and the technology that you see implemented in vehicles. And a lot of times, if you go to the consumer's perspective, they're wondering, why am I seeing such advancements in technologies happening? It's
Yeah.
because now vehicles, there is a whole new level that's being evaluated, and we are talking about avoiding the collision altogether.
Mhm.
And that is a new dynamic. There's intelligence and technologies that have to be put together, and tested and implemented, and rolled out on a public level. And so that is why understanding this holistic view, of Euro, or the 5-star safety rating, is really, I think, going to help. I would say the driver, the consumer, or even the end user of the product, right? I think it's going to help them navigate what they're seeing. That's what I think.
I would agree, and in that, on on that specific subject there, I would say my kind of like pro tip that I like to give whenever possible, of like, hey, if you're in the showroom looking at a new
Right.
car, um, of any price point really, if you're in the showroom looking at a new car and you see and you're looking for a 5-star safety rating,
Mhm.
this is why we're talking about this is why this matters, is because the 5-star safety rating is no longer just, how few injuries will it have you sustain in a crash. The 5-star safety rating, consider this when you're looking at a new car, is what kind of technologies does it have that could prevent even getting to that point at all.
Exactly.
And so that's, if you're in the showroom, I would advise, I mean, especially like, I mean, from being a parent, if you're getting
Mhm.
like a big SUV, ask about airbags in the second and third row and so on.
Yeah.
All that obviously is important, but even more than that, consider things like, how many how does the car decide or tell if everyone has their seatbelt on?
Mhm. Mhm.
Does it have seatbelt monitoring? Does it have a more advanced driver monitoring system?
Exactly. No, I'm glad you said that, because the average driver, understanding what that 5-star safety rating means, they do need to know what changes matter when they're in the showroom. They need to
Mhm.
know those questions that they need to be asking. And so we talked a bit even about this. What we're getting ready to transition to is the button rebellion, right?
Oh
So
yeah,
the the
the old age old debate of more or less buttons in modern cars.
That's
Oh yeah.
right. Jason talked about cars reasoning with, collaborative intelligence, but here it is. The Euro NCAP is now grading that relationship. If your car buries a critical control in a touchscreen menu while you're stressed on a highway, it has failed the collaborative mission before the conversation even happened. And
Hmm.
this is about buttons. This is about physical buttons. This is about that user experience. And so, if you think about that actually from the Distracted Driving Awareness Month lens, this is not an abstract policy debate. This is actually a standard saying that cars now own the interface, and it cannot be distraction.
Exactly. Yeah, and it has gone beyond just this kind of, silly debate amongst car enthusiasts of like, oh, all the young kids and their touch screens, it gets too advanced, but then like, oh, those old people have too many buttons, they don't know how good it is to be able to use all this stuff, and there's this whole,
Yeah.
that's like, so some enthusiasts want, all buttons and a manual transmission and so on, and which has its own charm, and I do like many aspects of that. And then
Yeah.
there's the other kind of like, oh, more and bigger, better touch screens and so on. But now this has now made its way into actually into policy making.
That's right.
How about that? That's when it has just, that's how it's gone far beyond just forums on the internet of or people disagreeing in comments. This
Yep.
has now made its way to policy making of vehicles having physical buttons, or meaning buttons and dials or switches, so on, just more tactile controls.
Mhm.
That has made its way into policy making of how do we decide how safe a new car is.
That's right. Yeah, that's called the Euro NCAP's distraction mandate, and so that actually starts in January of 2026.
Yep.
Manufacturers cannot achieve that highest safety rating without providing physical switches for turns, signals, hazard lights, the horn, windscreen wipers, and some other SOS, so like in any emergency functions. And so
Yeah.
this is not a design preference anymore. It is a safety standard. And that is a really big statement to me. That's a really big statement because that affects design now and in the future.
Yeah, and this is the kind of thing that has been scrutinized, like really scientifically scrutinized. There's it's not just like, oh well, the the old people won, we get, we have to all have buttons now. It's
Right.
not that. It's actually, there's been so much testing about this, and
Mhm.
there's really data behind that rule, and that if that and they found that with touchscreen features, and not even touchscreen, just haptic like
Mhm.
feedback, controls where it's like a panel and it's
Mhm.
touch sensitive, even just that, that if that causes distraction in the way it does, that if you take your eyes off the road for just 2 extra seconds to do that, it more than doubles your risk of an accident.
Exactly. Exactly. And I will say, from a real practical perspective, I love to give real examples. I have no problem putting myself out there.
Mhm.
I sometimes, will like to apply my lipstick, and you can go back in episodes. I've talked about this, in the car. And so you underestimate 1 second when you're driving. I've done it. And literally, almost too close to a car in front of me just to put on like another layer of lipstick. And so, you know, when you get down to the practical level, we've all experienced some of these dangerous situations with
Mhm.
touch screens looking down too long, and so there's research and data that backs it. They've collected it. And so it's real. We all know it's real. And I will tell you this, I do feel a little bit safer knowing that there might be something working, making sure that I'm paying attention when I need to be paying attention. And I've said that
Yeah.
before too.
Yeah, I've experienced it myself in some newer cars. Not about lipstick, obviously, but
Well, yeah,
but
yeah.
surprise. But I've experienced it
Oh,
in
Luke.
some of the new cars that I interact with a lot in my day to day. Is that if you once you activate cruise control, if it's a vehicle that's equipped with adaptive cruise control, then if you if you have your hands off the wheel for
Right.
a certain for even just like a couple seconds, then
Hmm.
it'll ding ding ding, and it'll say driver distraction. Please
Right.
take take hold of the wheel.
Hmm.
Um, or even and some vehicles that I've been in where it actually does have a completely hands free and feet free system where you just don't touch it at all.
Right.
And it just goes on the freeway on its own. If you look away like this, and if you're away from maybe 2 or 3 seconds, and not even like behind you, but like even if you just look down at like the screen, then and I've tested this on like on a straight, with no, busy traffic. I've tested this where I just look down at the touchscreen and keep looking there with, with a little glance up every now and then, but enough for the system to notice me, and it says and it'll sound a notice that says driver distraction.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not paying attention. And that is actually another very significant change because the driver monitoring score went from 2 points to 25 points.
Yeah.
And we talked about this in our last episode, the quiet conversation, and we mapped out how your eye gaze, your blink rate, your steering grip are all, being read by your vehicle. And so
Mhm.
now Euro NCAP has now made that a score mandatory category up to 25 points. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is very significant. And that speaks to, actually, if you look at it from the driver consumer perspective, you can kind of see where the priorities are focused on for design for now and in the future of cars. You will start to see more driver monitoring systems.
Yeah, it shows how much gravity they
Yeah,
see that holding, that it went from 2 to 25.
exactly.
Remember when you would take a test in school, I mean like elementary school, like Scantron, that kind of thing, and you'd be studying, and teacher would tell you about it ahead of time, and there would be like, oh, these questions would be this much, and then there would be one that says and when you're like early elementary school and all this stuff is like a big deal to you, it's like then you see like there's like one of the last two questions or something that says in parentheses worth 2 points or worth 3 points because all the other ones were worth 1 point, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's and your elementary school mind, you're like, oh my god, it's high stakes now.
Right.
I can't get these wrong.
Exactly.
Well, what if you were taking one of those and suddenly a question said that it's going up to 25 points?
You're going to pay attention.
Yeah. I'm not comparing car safety to a Scantron test, but
Right.
I mean, it's that kind of thing. It shows how much weight they put on this.
Right. Exactly. And that means, just to break it down even a little deeper, the system must now detect drowsiness at highway speeds. Okay. So they're putting specific requirements on the technologies, which I also think if you translate it to the consumer, and this 5-star safety rating, knowing that the technology has been tested to measure drowsiness at highway safety speed. So if you want me to trust it, did you test it at this level? That connection is powerful for trusting these technologies, increasing user adoption and trust in what you're actually purchasing or investing in.
100%. And that's drowsiness at highway speeds is an enormous thing. That is something that I've actually really struggle with at times. The very first ever accident that I ever was in was because of just drowsiness took over me on the way home, like from college. Now this was in stop and go, like bumper to bumper traffic, so this was maybe a 5-mile-an-hour impact, so it wasn't anything catastrophic, but it was something. It was the first time I ever hit another car, and it was because of drowsiness. And shocker, the 1989 Chevrolet Blazer that I had didn't monitor that I was getting drowsy.
Right.
And so, yeah, needless to say, again, the 5-star safety rating was a different thing back then.
Right.
But now where we're at now, it's not just drowsiness at highway speeds. This new system that is going from 2 to 25 points, it's also monitoring specifically for distraction beyond just eyes off the road, including frequent glances. So if you try to, fake it out that like, oh, I'm still looking, it's meant to detect that pattern.
That's right.
Because that is equally, if not more distracting, because you're really dividing your attention. And of course, another big one that it's looking for is phone use distraction.
Yes.
And so that's even going to pick up on things like, if your phone's connected with Bluetooth in the car, the Bluetooth system could actually detect, oh, the phone's being used outside of using the car.
That's right.
And that's going to be another thing. How often have we seen this? Actually, I was going to mention this happened only 2 days ago. I was coming home from work, and I was at an intersection, and it was all red, red through traffic, red, turn lane. And I'm in the through traffic just waiting. And, the turn lanes have their green arrows. So each turn lane is supposed to go. Right. And there was only one car in the turn lane to the left of me. Light turned green, did not move.
Yep, on their phone.
Guess what? Didn't move. Light turned yellow. Light turned red.
Oh, wow.
Never moved.
Oh my goodness.
And there was no cars behind them. No one honked at them. No one honked at them. And I thought about honking at them, but I didn't honk at them because I wanted at some point for them to look up and realize they missed an entire opportunity to turn. Oh, I shouldn't have been on my phone.
Yeah.
So phone use detection is actually another thing that now they are specifically looking for.
You got that right. On top of the normal impairment from alcohol and drugs, right?
Oh, yes, of course.
Beginning within the first 10 minutes of a trip. Listen to this. Beginning at the first 10 minutes of a trip at speeds of 50 or higher. So 50 miles per hour or higher. Okay. So that is very specific. That is very specific because the impact of someone operating a vehicle at more than 50 miles per hour, the impact or the damage that can be resulted of that is very catastrophic. Someone can lose their life.
Oh,
and
100%.
so knowing that is being tested, that is very important. That connection, like I spoke about just a minute ago, is so, so important. And I know that we have Luke, I want you to shed a little bit of light on the question that we got.
I will in a moment. I did just want to make a point about one thing.
Yeah.
That officially it's it's looking for impairment of drugs or alcohol in the first 10 minutes at speeds of up to 50 kilometers
Got it.
per hour or higher, which translates to 31 miles per hour. So they're
Okay.
actually looking for at a significantly even slower speed than 50.
There you
So
go. There you go.
again, it's even more stringent. So 50, again, this is Euro NCAP. So by default, they're putting things in kilometers per hour. But just to note, it's 50 kilometers per hour or 31 miles per hour
There
is
you go.
where the system is monitoring for the drugs and alcohol.
That's even more important because now you're talking about residential areas, which makes sense.
Yep.
Because you have kids in residential areas. So that makes total sense. That makes total sense. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows about that. So as far as the question that we got, we did get, of course, to kick off our miniseries, we got another great question from one of our listeners. And so they asked, that I checked my car's safety rating when I bought it 2 years ago, and it was 5 stars. Does this 2026 overhaul mean that my car is suddenly less safe? And I really like that. I like this because I was actually thinking about this when we were kind of discussing, and kind of creating a roadmap for our miniseries. And this was such a good topic to bring up that now just suddenly, a change in the writing suddenly make the old car less safe. And no, I wouldn't say so. I would say the important bottom line is don't feel unsafe driving your car.
Right.
Because don't think that, oh, suddenly I have to go buy a new car. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is not like, oh, suddenly my phone feels outdated, I need to go get a new phone. It's not like that. Right. Because remember, no matter how much they change the writing, change the law, change the policy, the number one safety feature is a attentive driver. Mm-hmm. And just being an attentive driver, being responsible is going to be more powerful than any of these high-tech features we ever talk about.
Right.
So if you are driving a very old car, even a very old car, like really lacking in safety features, in modern safety features, if you are driving very safely and responsibly, you're probably going to be okay.
Right.
And so the short and quick answer is don't worry about having to go buy a new car if it's just a few years old. But what is important to note is that these new ratings apply to new vehicles. Again, new car assessment program. And so that doesn't mean that your old car will be retroactively rated. Doesn't mean that now suddenly you're driving a 3-star safety and you have to be worried about it. But it does give you a couple of very important points to consider. That one, there are going to be questions that you should be asking the next time you purchase a car. New or used, even if you get one used and it's maybe a few years back. Look at what kind of safety features it has or doesn't have compared to this new standard that is being implemented. And then also what features to look for compared to this previous one, which is what you have right now. So if you have a car to this person, if I don't know they didn't specify their year, make, or model, other than say it was, or they said 2 years ago, but outside of make or model, their car might already have some of these features. Mm-hmm. I would say 2 to 3 years ago is still a very modern car with a lot of modern features. But when it comes to some of these new implementations, it might not, or these new features being implemented, it might not have all of those. So just be mindful that it's more important than ever to just be a responsible driver. We always end our podcast with drive safely for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you said something key. It's standards. And so those standards, if I understand correctly, they're updated roughly every 3 years to keep pace with technology. And so if you think about that, the standards that were compared to your vehicle at that year to now have changed. So you have to take that into consideration as well with the 5-star safety rating, and also look at the time that we're in. Also why vehicles are being designed, because a lot of what we're talking about today is tied to the data that's being collected by the DOT and by being collected by NHTSA. And then they are now designing technology or designing reinforcement to try to mitigate some of these risks. So even paying attention to current events will be helpful, for you as well, to be able to understand that question as well. So I think that was a great answer. Well, I think we did it, Luke.
Yeah,
think we actually did it.
I think so. Which is crazy.
I think we did it. I mean,
How do you fit a car conversation into an allotted amount of time?
oh my gosh. But you know what? We did it. I think just, to wrap up what we talked about today, we gave a lot of information, but at the end of it, the 5-star safety rating has been rewritten. There are some new standards, right? And April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month. And so it's the right moment for you to be able to understand what that means. And that's why that is what we wanted to do today. And that is why we have 3 more episodes. And so what you see now, what you will continue to see on the inside of the car is a safety category. And your participation, your micro interactions in the way that you operate in the car, those are now data points. And those are contributing to what is being evaluated to make sure that you are safe in a new modern vehicle equipped with so much technology. And so that means the system is working to protect you. And next week, we're going to go a layer deeper. Actually, in a couple of weeks, we're going to go a layer deeper with the federal mandate that requires your car to stop for a pedestrian in complete darkness.
Yeah.
That is now a new rule, and it's called now this is a long title, FMVSS 127. I know it sounds crazy. We actually did a deep dive for you at the beginning of this year and broke this whole thing down for you. So I would encourage all of our listeners to go back to that on LinkedIn. You can download that information and actually see what we're going to be diving into, or you can tune in to episode number 2. If today's conversation helped you see the rating differently, share it with someone who may not know that these changes are happening. That way they can understand when they're shopping for a new car, what that 5-star safety rating means, but they also can make the connection of why is so much tech here? Why is driver monitoring systems even in the mix? A lot of these conversations can be tied to policy, can be tied to Euro NCAP, which we talked about today, and we will dive deeper next week. And so don't forget to make sure you subscribe to the FeaturesTalk podcast. We're live today on LinkedIn and we're live on YouTube. And we're also putting out so much content for you guys on our pages so that you can learn and educate yourself and empower yourself to really be a safe driver in this modern age of automation. Anything you want to say, Luke?
Well, just continue to drive safely, and well, I'll be 34 this month, so.
Well, you know what? Happy early birthday. Happy early birthday. I'm so excited about that. And we are wishing you such a happy new year and a new birthday. And I'm pretty sure. Go ahead.
I wish everyone else the safest drive possible.
That's right. And until next time, drive safe.
Drive safely.